Welcome to Web3 Whiskey, a podcast about how the decentralized internet will change our lives. In each episode, we react to a future when users and communities have all of the power and when digital lives could be more vibrant than real life. And we drink whiskey while doing it. I'm your host, Gary Liu, and as always, I'm joined by Suresh Balaji, founder of the Web3 Marketing Association, and Malcolm Ong, a product leader and serial entrepreneur. Now, quick disclaimer, we don't shill projects in this podcast. So should you consider any of us a little bit too excited about what we're talking about, do consider that it is personal opinion, and you should not think about any of that personal opinion as investment advice of any kind. Today's main topic, what if a DAO bought a sports team? What if a DAO bought a sports team? Before we get to that main topic of discussion, let's start by talking some whiskey. Gentlemen, what are we drinking today? I will start with Suresh. What do you have open today?
I have one of my absolute favorites, Amrut, which is an Indian whiskey. I lived in Bangalore for 7 years of my life when I was really young. And Bangalore was known for beer. It was never known for whiskey. So there comes a distillery who sets up India's first single malt. And it reminds me of my days in Bangalore. It's got a sort of spicy note to it. It's got sort of sweet honey to it. And I think I smell Bangalore in it. So it's in my head, but I do. So I absolutely love it. There are so many versions of it, but today I'm just having just a regular one.
I love it.
Just the original.
Thank you for introducing Amrut to this group.
I don't think I've ever tried a whiskey from India.
Oh, okay. Next week we're going to do it together.
Excellent. Okay, Malcolm, what about you? What do you have this week?
All right. Today I got a whiskey from Kavalan.
Wow.
It's a distillery from Taiwan, an award-winning distillery from Taiwan. The one that I have today, it's a single malt sherry cask Solist. A little sweet, kind of dried fruit taste to it. It tastes a little hot in the beginning because I think it's got about, 58.6% volume.
We're taking a world tour today. We got Indian whiskey. We have Taiwanese whiskey. And for me today, I have a Tobermory whiskey. It's from a independent bottler called Dunbehagen. But this is a Tobermory 19 that they must have had probably 2 or 3 casks of, because it says the number of bottles is 959. So that tells me that it probably is like 3 casks that they blended together. Tobermory is a very small distillery that is on an island that you have to take a ferry to get to from the Scottish mainland. Actually, you get on the ferry just in the town of Oban, where the Oban distillery is, and then amongst many other places that you can take the ferry. But the way that I got there once was a ferry from Oban. And it's a little tiny distillery. It does this Tobermory unpeated whiskey. And then actually Tobermory produces a peated whiskey that is extremely hard to find, called Ledaig. It's actually spelled Ledaig. Very, very difficult to find. If you do find it, it is so incredibly unique, definitely worth a drum. And recently, Tobermory started making gin as well. So their gin is also absolutely delicious. So this one, it's not overly produced at the end. A little bit of sort of autumnal fruit flavor. It's very buttery, or what I guess whiskey connoisseurs actually call waxy, which is the texture. And has a little bit of like cut butterscotch taste to it. So, thank you for sharing your whiskeys, gentlemen. Let's start with a sip. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. One more thing before we get to our main discussion. Every week we get some reactions to the news. So I'm going to hand it over to our producer, Disco Wolf, or as we call him, D-Dubs. What do you have for us this week?
I've got 5 news items for you guys today. First, Real Madrid and FC Barcelona filed a joint trademark application for metaverse activities. Suresh, what do you think?
It was inevitable. This is where mass adoption is going to come from, because sports communities are super tight communities, much like gaming, much like music. Where I think the collision of Web3 and entertainment, sports, etc., is going to be fabulous. Fan tokens are the new trading cards. There'll be much more to follow. I think a lot of money is about to be made by opening up Web3 in the sports world. So well done, clubs. I think we will see. We're going to see lots of these.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense, especially for these two clubs. They're two of the greatest fan machines in the world. I don't know if Real Madrid and Barca fans are happy that their two teams are cooperating on anything, but their fan bases are just they're rabid. So this really makes a lot of sense. Plus, both clubs have already experimented in and actually invested in blockchain. Real Madrid actually has their trading cards on So Rare. By the way, Suresh, I feel like digital trading cards are the new trading cards. And they're selling so well. I mean, some of these So Rare Real Madrid cards are selling for like hundreds of thousands of euro, just crazy to me. And Barca put enough, cares enough about this that they put real money into starting a Web3 studio that is now worth a couple $100 million. So this is two clubs who understand fan engagement, who are now looking for next generation engagement, and it's a really, really good start that other people are going to learn from.
Yeah, I agree. Right, soccer is one of the largest sports in the world, and it just makes sense. It's great to see them actually pushing the envelope and actually putting the money where their mouth is. So I think Metaverse is a great application or use or platform for these types of applications to engage their communities. So I think this is good.
And you add NFT season tickets and passes, IRL events, gated Discord channels. I think, whoa, this is the true use of Web3 technologies to take the whole engagement to the next level. Super cool.
On to our second item of the day. OpenSea introduces a new stolen item policy to combat NFT theft. Gary.
I think this development highlights the massive security issues that we really still need to tackle and address in the NFT world. Non-custodial solutions are actually surprisingly easy to access right now, which is almost it's counter sort of to the philosophy of non-custodial solutions. And they're easy to access because they're complicated. The user experience is not really airtight. And so what we would traditionally call phishing or social engineering scams in Web 2 work really, really well in Web 3 right now. You're literally clicking yes to things that you don't know where they come from. And you're signing smart contracts and allowing people access to your assets, thinking that these are legitimately part of some project that you are engaged with or some NFT collection that you have bought into. And there's just scammers, and they take a bunch of stuff from your wallets. And most of the scams that we hear about people losing their Bored Apes and CryptoPunks, it comes from this kind of phishing or social engineering. And certain blockchains are really susceptible right now to protocol layer exploits as well. I won't name any, but those of you in the industry know which blockchains I'm referring to. They need that stuff needs to be fixed because digital assets are worth a lot of money now, and security really needs to be improved. So the fact that we need a policy is not a good thing, and it really highlights that the security flaws still need to be fixed.
Yeah, I think this is a necessary action. I think, like you said, Gary, it's a technology that gives users more control, but with more control, obviously, comes more responsibility. And I think a lot of users are still learning how to do that. So it's good to actually see OpenSea protecting users and making the steps to protect users. If anything, they should have done this a lot earlier, in my opinion.
Here's the question, right? So it has also given rise to a lot of fake stolen NFT claims. People land up transferring the NFT to someone and not necessarily recording it. The payment doesn't happen on OpenSea. They get fiat payment offline. All sorts of stuff happens, and then they write to OpenSea saying, "Hey, actually, this was a stolen NFT," and then that NFT user gets blacklisted. So it is going to be really hard to manage, maintain, and police the ecosystem. There has to be a better way than just reporting and blacklisting of users. It feels very rudimentary right now, and those claims are going up now, right? They will have to stand up a full team now just to go down the rabbit hole of each of these cases. Before they did this, originally, I think I read somewhere that you had to submit a police report to say that your NFT got stolen. it was at least, it would have at least that sort of legal slash um, you know law enforcement based verification was a good step, but our, I mean, would our neighborhood police officers know what to do when we go and tell them, hey, our NFT got stolen? I think lots need to be done in terms of integrating this into real world in some way. Otherwise, this is going to be complete anarchy.
All right, number 3 item. Taco Bell files a trademark application to register Taco Bell in the metaverse. Malcolm.
Yeah, not sure where they're going to take this. I mean, we can use our imagination, but for now, it just seems like a legal prerequisite, perhaps, for things that they might do in the future.
You see, I wanted to say it's not a nothing burger. It's actually a nothing taco.
I think we're going to see more and more of this, guys. I get why you guys are so skeptical about this, or think that it's a nothing taco. But the reality is that the metaverse is a new jurisdiction. And whenever we launch our businesses in a new jurisdiction, we're going to go and get trademarks in those places. And the metaverse, I think, increasingly looks like that. No one knows what the long-term rules are going to be. So I actually think smart brands are going to be covering their butts and getting trademarks. And so I actually think that more brands should be doing this specific for the metaverse. I know that in founding Artifact Labs, we had to go get trademarks for Artifact Labs, and there had to be very specific use cases for those trademarks, and the metaverse or a virtual world is one of those. So maybe it is going to lead to some money grab by Taco Bell, because maybe we're all skeptical about their ability to execute in the metaverse. But getting a trademark, I think, is probably the smart thing to do for a company like that.
I'm not too sure I want metaverse tacos. I like some real tacos. Number 4 item. Vitalik Buterin proposes stealth addresses for anonymous NFT ownership. Suresh.
Part of me, I'm quite skeptical about this, right? I think we probably need the exact opposite of this, which is trying to create more transparency. I get why some users may not want to be doxxed, but we probably need to get to a position where the world is open and they turn up with their true selves, and they are comfortable doing what they're doing. This could lead to a lot of dark web stuff, right? That's the issue. But on the other hand, I think, well, this is the same way that encryption, when encryption came about, when SSL came about, the whole world was like, wow, encryption would mean bad actors. Encryption would mean people might be able to send stuff without law enforcement seeing it. So maybe I'm judging it too early to say that this is not the right direction. But I am walking into this with a big dose of skepticism, saying, is this the right thing to do or not?
Yeah, Suresh, I do think you're judging it probably a little too early. I disagree with you that this is going to lead to just dark web stuff. There are very legitimate use cases for transactions on blockchain to be anonymous, especially if we're talking about a world in the future where wallets will be central to our identity, right? We talk a lot about digital identity amongst ourselves on this podcast. If we expect wallets and our digital identities to really be important for the future, in effect replacing kind of ID cards, maybe email addresses, then I think anonymous transactions, some categories of it, are necessary. For instance, what if somebody has to go to an abortion clinic, okay, and pays for a procedure with crypto, and then the abortion clinic needs to send them some blockchain-based reports, okay? This is a very real possible scenario when the wallet is the only way to get to individuals. And it doesn't, I'm using abortion because it's a sensitive topic right now. We get we can understand why people want to keep their visits to abortion clinics private, but just even a doctor, like if you do telemedicine in the future and the doctor needs to send you a report, right? That's probably going to go into your wallet. Do you really want that report? Not even the context of it. That can be, the contents of it can be encrypted, but do you even want the trail of that report having been sent to you from a specific clinic to be completely transparent? So I do think that there are cases, and these cases can be regulated. These categories of transactions can be regulated, but they should be protected by a level of anonymity. Yeah,
I agree here. I think this proposal just shows you what more you can do with this technology. Privacy is going to be an important component, as Gary said, to identity, right? Especially if identity is meant to be more decentralized, more transparent. So actually privacy as a feature should definitely be there. So I think this actually gives us the option in the future to use it for privacy reasons if and when we need to.
Who decides which categories should be
TBD.
private categories? Yeah, this is the thing, right? So I think this is where we'll probably have a lot of friction. And we will have to go away from decentralization and ensure that we trust somebody to create that framework. TBD.
TBD it is then. Final item. A new EU law will regulate NFTs like real cryptocurrencies. Gary.
I think this is terrible. I don't even know where to begin. Regulating NFTs, all NFTs, by the way, as cryptocurrencies. This is just regulators not understanding the technology. And all they see traditional sector risks instead of seeing the new economy opportunities. EU regulators specifically said that the proposed law is supposed to, quote unquote, protect investors and preserve financial stability while allowing innovation and fostering the attractiveness of the crypto assets sector. First of all, when they say that this is supposed to protect investors and preserve financial stability, it means that they only see NFTs as these really, really, really high value virtual assets that people are buying and selling for the sake of speculation and price increases. And they absolutely do not understand the membership aspect of them, the memorabilia side of this world, the utility side of this world. They just don't get it. They see a tiny slice of this industry. And second of all, this is supposed to allow for innovation and fostering the attractiveness of the crypto asset sector. I call absolute BS. This is going to stall, if not kill, Web3 innovation in the European Union. I think this is terrible.
See, I think I want to take the optimistic approach to this and say almost any regulation is a good step forward, because especially for something like this, even if they don't get it right the first time, it will at least then incentivize even more open debate, right? Which then in turn allow us to actually evolve the regulation over time. So I actually see this as like the fact that they want to regulate it, right, means that they actually care about it in some way, even if it's wrong. They care about it in some way. They see its impact. And so therefore, it's coming up to the surface, if you will, something that could become impactful to everyone's lives. So I actually think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, I'm with Malcolm here. Gary, I think that's a glass half full of whiskey view. I think the first thing is that the debate around whether tokens or securities or commodities continue. That's the first thing that will continue. I think I am pro-regulation, as Malcolm is. Most of it is aimed at keeping the bad actors out. If you go back to IRL, Web 0, property rights, IP rights, patents, those things are the ones that really protect innovators in many ways. I agree with you that there might be some friction as we go into it, but if you really want mass adoption, I think this industry policy, regulatory frameworks will definitely make things better, easier, invite more people. They know that they can innovate without being scared or feeling that, hey, they're walking into a space that is just the Wild West. This is fabulous, actually. Well done, EU.
Well, listen, the details of the regulation matters. I think the devils are there. If you read into it, we're talking about regulation that means whenever an artist just painting in their own studio wants to release NFTs, they have to go through a process that takes several months of approval to even release NFTs. Okay, that's not helpful regulation. That's not regulation that protects the retail investor. That just completely stops creativity and innovation in the industry right now.
That'll change. It used to take several months to set up companies. Now it takes 30 seconds. So and I think we need a starting point. This is an MVP, and it will get better, right?
Okay, well, let's see. We're gonna agree to disagree right now.
Thank you all for your glass half full and half empty views and all the insights. Now back to Gary to introduce our very exciting main topic of the day.
All right, thank you everyone for your reactions. Today's main topic of discussion: What if a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, bought a sports team? What if a DAO bought a sports team? Now, let me start by introducing to our listeners what a DAO is. For those of you who may not have heard of this term or have heard of it but are unsure what it really means, a decentralized autonomous organization is, simply put, a group of people working towards a collective goal without centralized authority or governance. By principle, DAOs are supposed to operate with transparency and autonomy. Now, the concept of the DAO, and this term was really coined in just a couple of years ago in 2016, and has become popularized more and more so in the last year, especially with the beginnings of scale and blockchain technology and blockchain applications, because blockchain and really token economics allows DAOs to function more effectively, efficiently than at any time in our past history. Now, most DAOs operate in a very similar fashion. So let me just draw out some of the ways, some of the sort of the similarities that we see amongst DAOs. First, DAO members own tokens. That signifies their membership in the actual decentralized autonomous organization. These tokens can be fungible or non-fungible, and they can be bought, or sometimes they're even airdropped. So you literally get tokens in your wallet, and you're now part of a DAO because you have these tokens. The tokens, more often than not, represent the voting share for the DAO members. So however many tokens you own as a percentage of the entire token ecosystem means how much of a voting share you have. There is, most of the time, clearly articulated purpose and goal for a DAO, because you expect that all the members are going to agree that there's a singular direction, there is a goal for this organism, and that the path to that goal will be determined by the DAO members democratically. And members are generally expected to comply with a set of community standards and values. There is often a DAO treasury, which is usually funded by the initial token sales or royalties from secondary sales of tokens. So these treasuries oftentimes just have cryptocurrencies in them, so they have a liquid monetary value. But there are also times where the DAO treasury is actually an asset or a collection of assets. And the DAO's role is to determine how those assets are best deployed and used. Now, DAO members, and most DAOs, they can submit proposals for funds to come out of the treasury, right, to be applied to, or other actions that are supposed to progress the DAO towards that shared goal. And then all DAO members are invited to vote on these proposals. Proposals that are voted on by maybe greater than majority. Some DAOs have kind of a 2/3 supermajority barrier to pass. Anything that passes that barrier are considered accepted proposals, and they're usually executed by a centralized team or assigned team of DAO members. And then those that are rejected just fade into history as things that we should never try to vote on again. And then finally, some DAOs do vote on establishing a centralized management team that is responsible for executing on continuous progress and on making sure that the DAO's wishes are administered properly. So that's generally speaking how a DAO operates. DAOs really represent an innovation in organizational design and collaboration that's made possible by crypto and by blockchain. DAOs have only recently become more mainstream. And there are lots of different DAOs and members and contributors that are adding to the use cases of DAOs, which I'm sure we will talk a lot about in today's conversation. And as a matter of context, the number of DAOs has increased from 700 to over 6,000 DAOs that you can count in just the past 12 months. So definitely a growing slice of the Web3 world. So what if a DAO were to buy a sports team? What would that look like? What are the implications of that? I want to start with Malcolm, who I know has been thinking a lot about this. Malcolm, I think amongst the three of us, might be the most ardent supporter of DAOs and DAO structures. Malcolm, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think this is very interesting in imagining, if this decentralized organization, this new-ish model of org design can actually own a big piece of a sports team and make an impact. I don't actually think it's too far-fetched an idea. In fact, I go back to an example in the NFL where this is sort of already happening. The Green Bay Packers, right? They're the only publicly owned franchise in the NFL, and so they are actually owned by shareholders, more than 500,000 shareholders. Although they're not publicly traded, so when you do own or buy a share, if you want to sell it, it has to actually go through the team, and the team, has their own rules around that. And in reality, like as a shareholder, you don't really receive much. You have voting rights. You get to attend the annual meeting. You might have opportunity to purchase some things that are exclusive to shareholders only, whether it's merch or other things. But beyond that, there's not much else. But if you think about it, then as a shareholder, I might feel that I have some piece of ownership in this. So I'm highly incentivized, more than a typical fan, to actually ensure and hope and help to actually make sure the team is successful. So in a very similar fashion, I think that's what a DAO can do with all sorts of different sports teams. And in fact, we are already seeing this example in several different ways. There's one organization, there's one DAO called Buy the Broncos, and they're attempting to buy the Denver Broncos, right, a football team. This is interesting because the Denver Broncos right now, it would cost them $4 billion to actually do this. Now, it's crypto. It's not unfathomable to think that they can raise this much money, but even in crypto, I think that's a lot of money. Now, it's not to say that they have to buy it outright. Maybe they're one of many investors. Maybe the DAO is simply one of the investors, right? And they partner with other investors here to actually be having ownership here. But the thing that's interesting is, if they did this, they effectively would get a seat at the table, and their intent is not to disrupt normal operations, right? This isn't a bunch of fans, coming together as a club, putting money down, buying a team, and then suddenly like telling them whether they should, try for the fourth down or not, right? It's not that level of decision making in this case. They simply want to have a voice. They simply want to help where they can, and then on the side, get some membership perks. What I actually think is interesting here is they've actually approached current and former NFL players, and those folks that they've talked to are actually bought into this. And some of them actually said, yes, if you guys go through with this, I'm in, right? I will be one of your DAO members and I will support this. So I think this is interesting. If imagine then if players themselves actually have ownership into the teams that they're playing with, does that give them more agency? Does that give them more loyalty? I think that's super interesting.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second? Because we are talking about ownership, right? There's a difference, and a massive difference, between ownership and membership. I can understand. I mean, the Green Bay Packers, the way that they operate is that they have shareholders that can vote, and what they primarily vote on is they vote on the board of directors for the Green Bay Packers. And of all the board of directors, and I believe there's 7 members to this board, there is one president, or the chair of the board, who is the only one who's paid, and that person has the final say on hiring the front office teams, on the budget for the Denver Broncos, which, by the way, because they're a nonprofit, they're supposed to always have a balanced budget at the end of every single year. And so that person gets to decide who makes the decisions for the team. Okay, for the professionals making decisions for a professional sports team, right? It's not like if they put up the vote on what free agent to sign, right? What strategy to use on the field, up to their shareholders. The shareholders don't have a say on that. The only thing they can do is they can vote out, if they wanted to, the head of the board. And technically speaking, a new head of the board could change the coach and change the front office and whatnot. Right? So that to me is membership, and it's not ownership. I think what we're talking about here is ownership. And I'm very skeptical on whether a bunch of fans could ever be good owners. Like if this Buy the Broncos DAO actually bought the Denver Broncos, I would bet hard against the Denver Broncos from ever making it back to an NFC Championship game.
Well, I think it's maybe somewhere in between, right? Where yes, they get to vote for whatever proposals. Yes, they get to vote in the leadership team, but I think they have the ability to engage with call it the crowd, the power of the crowd, the power of the members, and the power of the community more, right? And I'll give you some examples here. I actually found there's 3 examples. Interestingly enough, coincidentally, they're all part of the big 3 3x3 basketball league. So there's a Solana NFT project called The Gods. There's another project called Kraus House, and then there's a third project by a VC, Bill Lee, who's a VC at Craft Ventures, called My Doge. In all 3 cases, they've successfully and been able to purchase NFTs that represent the top tier for this collection that these football teams have released. And so they've essentially purchased, let's say, all 25 of the what they call the fire tier of NFTs at $25K each, and then offering their DAO members additional opportunity to mint, the additional 975 gold tier NFTs. But what this has actually allowed them to do is, we mentioned, the voting. We mentioned voting on leadership team. It gives them IP rights to merch, so that might be interesting if there's ways to do that. They've actually been able to help with sponsorships. So in the example of the Ball Hogs team with I think it was Ball Hogs with Kraus, they've been able to help the power forward with a sponsorship, because the power forward, I think Stacey Davis said that he happens to enjoy Lara protein bars, and one of the members of the DAO said, "Oh, I actually know someone there." And it ended up being landed him a sponsorship deal, right, through that connection, through that power of that organization, the crowd. Third, I think can help with scouting. I recently saw a new movie, I think it's called The Hustle, with Adam Sandler, and it was talking about how it was a story about how he scouted a player in an area in a city that most scouts don't even reach. So the long tail of scouting, right? So I think this is interesting, because then could you effectively scale scouting? Can you take advantage of, again, your crowd to help scout? And then finally, I think content. DAOs can help and are incentivized to actually help create content for marketing for yourself, right? Why isn't the Golden State Warriors, why don't they already have like a bunch of podcasts, a bunch of video series just about them? I mean, there's probably some, and the team is probably creating some and sponsoring some, but the team can only do so much. They only have so many employees. So if the DAO can help with that, right, it's more than just random creators and random, UGC that's out there. This is actually a structured, organized group of people doing it. So I actually think those are the things that are exciting. But you're absolutely correct. It's not, voting on every single little detail and disrupting the operations, because these are fans. They're not the professionals. I mean, they're voting in, the professionals to lead and operate here.
But one thing that Gary wasn't correct about was that the Denver Broncos are not part of the NFC, but the AFC.
Yes, I should know that. The Denver Broncos and the Patriots and my Jets. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I just referred to them as an NFC team. One thing I do believe I'm right about is that I don't think the Green Bay Packers model can ever be replicated again in the NFL, right? This is American football, because I believe that now there's an explicit rule that in the NFL, NFL teams cannot be owned by corporations. And Green Bay Packers, the way they're structured, is a publicly owned corporation. But they were grandfathered in after that rule came in, just because they've been doing this for so many generations. So I think a DAO would be probably considered a corporation in that sense, and because, even one without central governance. So I wonder if the Broncos could ever even do this, even if they raised $4 billion, because I don't think the NFL bylaws would let them.
That's the second question, is whether they practically and realistically can, depending on the rules of each and every franchise and sport.
Yeah. And I know all 3 of us are sports fans, so at some point I do want to get to the sports piece of it. But Suresh, let me pass it to you. Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? I love the whole concept of DAOs. Someone said DAOs are nothing but a Discord channel with a balance sheet, right? Which is a fabulous quote. But the challenge right now is DAOs are. We just established that DAOs are not everything is decentralized. They're not necessarily autonomous, because there is a governance structure, and then there might be external regulation, all of that stuff. And it's not really an organization, because they don't have legal standing in most jurisdictions. So, a DAO is not really a DAO. It's semi-centralized, semi-autonomous, non-organization currently. So all of the people who go, oh yeah, amazing, yay, decentralization is here. It's not true. But I have been part of some DAOs, and I've been following some DAOs very closely over the last few years. I would say years, maybe. So sort of start early last year, maybe mid last year. My number one favorite is Links DAO. It all started with a group of golfers getting together and saying, hey, what if we created a DAO, not just as a membership, but what if we actually went and bought a golf course, a whole club? And I was like, wow, that's fantastic. So I've started following them, and in 6 months of launch, they've been able to host a. Firstly, when they launched their first token, I think they got sold out in a few weeks, and they raised close to $10 million. They put all of the money from the NFT sales into some sort of a multi-sig wallet, which is great. So it's like an escrow account for Web3, so that there are multiple people. There are maybe 5 to 8 people who hold the multi-sig key, so that the balance sheet is managed and somebody doesn't take the money and run away. And then they started doing lots of branded merchandise, which sells at a premium. They created partnership with lots of partnerships with blue chip brands. They partnered with Endeavor, right, which is one of the blue chip sports marketing agencies, and Endeavor represents Jordan Spieth, right? So they're not like a fly-by-night operator. They partnered with IMG to give course access to members last week, and I thought, wow. So actually, they are doing something, right? And people are voting on things that the DAO should be pursuing, and in their roadmap, they are planning to buy a golf course. And if they did that, that is the closest that comes to in today's what if scenario, which is what if someone owned a sports team. Of course, owning a golf course is sort of membership based, and we know that's the utility of it. But is there an opportunity to sort of extrapolate that into creating broader ownership of organizations? Who knows, right?
Well, so okay, again, we're still back to membership versus ownership or management, right? The idea of a DAO philosophically is that it's not just about membership. It is actually about management decisions being able to be made in a decentralized way because there is no central governance, right? Links DAO, which I, by the way, agree with you. I think not only is their marketing and their branding absolutely wonderful, but the way that they've communicated to the world about what they're trying to achieve is really, really cool. And they're actually acting. They're doing something with their $10 million treasury, which is awesome for Links DAO members. But this is the same as a country club. It's not that much different. That's what a country club is today. It is shared membership, right? Like debentures at the Hong Kong Golf Club, for instance, here in Hong Kong.
Here is the interesting thing. So what they are doing or will do will be they will create governance tokens, which will give people voting rights for specific areas. And you're a member, but you're a member who's also an owner, basis your membership, basis your participation, basis what you're creating. And the points that Malcolm made, which is if you're a member who owns a global membership and you are able to create a partnership plan and you bring it to the DAO and people give you access to a governance token, that gives you access to voting on things that you can vote in terms of the direction of the DAO. I think that's where it gets really interesting. But I think these models are new. These models are untested. Membership tokens versus governance tokens. How do you ensure that the right governance tokens go to the right people? How do you ensure that a small group of people don't own majority of the governance tokens and then takes away from real decentralization? All of these things are unknown. But Gary, we probably have to believe that sort of split between membership tokens and governance tokens is where the magic is.
Okay. All right. No, I like that split. I think that split will be extremely important for DAOs to operate properly. Listen, if DAOs at the end of the day are just a Web3 iteration of a membership club, right? And it's an evolved membership club because then the membership suddenly becomes liquid, right? It's an immediately liquid asset that can be traded. And also because of the fact that it's on the blockchain, there's authenticity to every member's engagement. And you can vote on a lot more things than maybe a country club member or a social club member can vote on today. That's interesting. But I still don't think that necessarily matches or achieves the kind of ethos that the DAO is meant to achieve, which is truly decentralized governance of an entire organization. The idea, I think, of the DAO is that a company can be run by democratic voting, right? By a group of people, however large, voting with their voting share. And there is a belief that this wisdom of the crowds could eventually lead to more efficient, effective, productive decision making than centralized governance for a company, for a potentially a city, for a country, right? We see city DAOs being built up. A DAO right now trying to buy a piece of land in the middle of nowhere in the United States to figure out whether or not they can govern a town as a DAO, and that's where I'm skeptical. I'm really skeptical that a DAO, that any group of people, large group of people, can effectively run an organization, a town, not to mention a country, because it just creates like inefficiency, regardless of how well built the protocol layer and the platform layer is for voting. It creates inefficiencies, right? Let me give an example. There's a really famous DAO project called Nouns DAO, okay, and it is considered one of the blue chip NFT collections out there. It started a little over a year, maybe close to a year and a half ago. I think it's already on its 411th or 412th day. And we measure it by day because the entire idea of the Nouns DAO is that this NFT collection was released one NFT per day and auctioned. And everyone who owns even just one of these NFTs is suddenly now part of the Nouns DAO. And every cent of the proceeds of the NFT sale goes into the Nouns DAO treasury. So the only way that the originating team is paid is that every 10th noun that is sold, so 1/10 of the supply of these NFTs, goes to the actual original team, right? So it's not sold; it just goes into a wallet shared by the original team for the first 5 years. Okay, so every dollar that is raised goes into this treasury, and now the Nouns DAO treasury is huge. They now have over 27,000 ETH, which, as of today's price, is $50 million in their treasury. $50 million of cash. Okay. Now, the Nouns DAO, ostensibly, was supposed to be a group of people that came together and used whatever money they raised to better the world. Okay. You can go look at the participation and the proposals that have been made by the Nouns DAO over the course of the last year plus. Okay. It's all public. It's on their website. Participation is usually around a third of Nouns owners participate in any vote. So, okay, 2/3 don't participate. That's fine. And if you go look at all the proposals, the ones that have been executed on, the vast majority of them are proposals for the sake of marketing nouns, right? Having nouns go quote unquote nounify an event, a conference, go set up like a regional kind of party, go do a collab with another NFT collection, go do a collab with a brand, whatnot. There are other proposals that are probably a little bit more meaningful, but the majority of the ones that have been accepted and therefore executed are for marketing purposes, with the clear intent of just driving up the exposure of nouns and therefore the value of each noun for the noun holders. That's exactly right. And I don't see that as impact. And the reality also is the execution of these accepted proposals takes forever, takes a long time, even though in each of these proposals, you're supposed to have actually proposed very clearly who the execution team is, who's going to execute on it once the proposal has been accepted by the DAO itself. My understanding is that a lot of these things take forever, and a lot of them kind of miss their deadlines and whatnot. That's from having spoken to noun holders who participated, and this is part of the reason why there's dropping participation in these proposal votes, right? So I know n equals 1. It's unfair to judge the DAO structure based on one example. But it's a pretty famous example, one with a lot of resources, $50 million in their treasury, and nothing, in my opinion, truly impactful has come of it. I personally can't imagine a company being run like that. And then specifically, we're talking about sports. and all of us here are sports fans. Okay, I'm an American sports fan. I watch my New York Yankees, my Brooklyn Nets, my New York Jets. So I don't like to admit that religiously, and I'm also religious about following their fan forums. I'm an active participant in the Yankees and Nets subreddits. I will never, ever, ever let you guys know what my Reddit username is because I've been aggressive in those fan forums for years. I'll tell you, I would never let those fan forums run my favorite sports team because there's a massive lack of understanding by those fans about what it actually takes to run a sports team. Everything about those forums and those fans are reactionary. Every time, there is a loss, it's fire everyone, trade everyone. There is no accountability and no long-term vision. When I think about a DAO buying a sports team, that's what I imagine, is that DAO and those fans are going to have a say and get to vote on decision-making. And I think that is the death for any sports team.
Well, here's the question, Gary. So we are assuming that all of the members of the DAO will be crazy fans. What if they're not? So this what if scenario. What if we got to a place where let's say there are 100 members of this DAO, and all 100 are actually people who are fans but are also capable, right? So those are the two things that we're talking about, right? Our assumption is that super capable people, not all fans are super capable people. What if we found the intersection? We found the intersection of capability and the connection to the purpose, and then wouldn't that? So it's a sort of best of hearts and minds. Wouldn't that DAO? Now imagine that DAO, right? Wouldn't that get us to a place? I think that's the what if scenario. Maybe I'm just walking around with pink tinted glasses and world is all lovely and everything is going to get better and it's maybe what if that scenario came to place?
Yeah, I think you can almost have like different tiers of membership within the DAO, right? So therefore, you could have different cohorts of people participate. And of course, the current structure of it, I think, will also evolve and iterate, right? So when you mentioned like 1/3 of participation in the announced DAO proposal, yeah, that sucks. But what if that project basically said, hey, everyone has to stake their NFT. And if you don't participate in this many proposals, you effectively lose the benefits of that staking, right? It automatically unstakes itself. So something like that, right? So I think there's mechanisms.
Yeah, one of the favorite Discord channels I'm on is DC Batcalls, and I'm a comic book fan, and every week DC have been sending me voting for what should Batman wear in the next comic, and who should the villain be, and where should so and so scene be set. Now imagine if DC then landed up setting up an organization, and they said, Suresh, because you own a DC Batcowl, you have an opportunity to own you can hold shares in this company if you capitalize it and you come on the cap table. So I go in, I become a shareholder and an NFT holder, and that put both of that together. Plus, I think I'm a half decent marketing executive, and I have capabilities to potentially tell them how to manage their marketing. So then you take my passions. You take my love for DC, you create that structure, you give me partial ownership, and I'm all in.
But is there still going to be a CEO?
Yeah.
But if there is, then it's not a decentralized autonomous organization, right? It's not a DAO.
Well, but it's the DAO that's purchasing or investing into a team and into another organization. It's not a DAO itself is a sports team. It's an investment DAO. Let's call it.
Okay.
Investing in a bunch of other stuff. Therefore, they're owners of that stuff, and they can help that.
All right. So then, what we are talking about is a different type of SPV, right? A different type of investment vehicle, which is more liquid than SPVs are today. It should be more accessible because you can then break down, tokenize, right, the participation in a DAO to small enough fragments that anyone who has interest in this stuff can hopefully afford to participate. Which, okay, fine, I'll give it to you guys. That's interesting. Listen, I'm not saying no to DAOs. Period. I've just always been skeptical about the idea that a DAO can replace a corporation, can it replace centralized governance of companies, right? And in this what if, the way that I interpreted it was a DAO buying and then operating a sports team, not just buying and funding a sports team, but buying and then operating a professional sports team.
I think it's investing and having some voice and influence. But yeah, I don't expect it to fully be 100% operating it, because I agree with you in terms of the downsides of that.
And I think there could be upsides. So if we get it right, if we get the protocol right, if we get the rules right, if we get I think it's hearts and minds. Oh my word, I can't but imagine how exciting that could be if we get capable people who are also fans doing something together. I mean, this is what big corporations fight for, right?
Yeah.
They fight for, let's get everyone getting riled up about our purpose and get excited about our purpose, and let's do chest thumping about something. And some very few organizations have gotten this right, and the ones that get that right, oh man, it's magic. So I sincerely hope somebody does it.
Yeah,
it should be like a McDonald's DAO that votes to bring the McRib back or something.
Oh, that's it.
The McRib is tied to pork prices, people. Well, okay. We can keep going on this, and we probably should bring this topic back at some point. I'm sure that we're going to have a reason to bring this back because, to Malcolm's earlier point, there are already organizations going down this path of trying to raise enough money through a DAO to own a very real asset and do something interesting with it. Constitution DAO, as an example, tried to buy one of the original copies of the U.S. Constitution. They failed. They were outbid by, a hedge fund billionaire who I think just wanted to mess with them. But DAOs are, what I agree with from this conversation is that DAOs are going to change the way we think about how individuals can have greater impact as part of a whole. And it is exciting. It is really, really interesting how they express that, and whether or not that brings efficiency or productivity to organizational design in the future. I'm a little bit more skeptical of. Now, let me wrap up here. In summary, we heard from Malcolm that in the sports context, he believes that DAO has clear applications: content marketing, sponsorships, scouting even, and definitely leveraging the passion of devoted fans. There's a huge community aspect to all of this. Members who have obvious incentives will hopefully ensure an organization's future and long-term success. But there are inefficiencies of DAOs, and it means that it may never match, or at least in my opinion, may never match the output of a centrally governed organization in terms of performance. Suresh, of course, as the marketer, is championing the incredible opportunities that DAOs will have by finding that intersection, as Suresh puts, the beauty in intersections of those who are truly passionate fans and those who have skill sets to offer to an organization. I do think that there's something of interest there. It may not even be considered, though, this what if in the eyes of the law, because DAOs raise a lot of questions on authority, on accountability, on IP rights, on consumer protections. I personally, as I'm sure those of you on the podcast have also heard, of people starting DAOs just because if they run afoul of the law, who do you sue in a DAO? Who do you arrest in a DAO? And because there is that opacity, or at the very least that the answer is no one knows. People are thinking about starting DAOs for maybe less than altruistic reasons. So thank you, gentlemen, for another excellent conversation. This has been Web3 and Whiskey. Please subscribe to this podcast on your preferred platform, and on YouTube, smash that like and subscribe button. Also, join us every single week in our weekly Departures newsletter that further explores Web3 innovations and provides explainers for the enterprise world. Join us next time for more Web3 debates and lots more whiskey. I'm Gary Liu. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.